Sound check, just a sound check.
We are all just our ancestors' dreams. And our success represents those dreams coming true.
Now is our time.
Oh, girl, magic! It's about lifting each other up.
It's about culture.
It's that girl magic. This is what I'm meant to do.
I don't think I want to hear your judge voice.
Maybe not.
Test. Check one. Test.
Testing. 1, 2, 3, testing.
Lindenwood offers over 100 majors.
Come on, it'll be really fun.
Okay, if we're quick about it.
1,000 in financial aid. Pretty awesome, right?
I can't wait to go here this fall.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to call this special meeting of the Board of Education to order for the specific purpose of swearing in new members. Mrs. Henry, if you could call the roll.
Ms. Hubbard. Here. Ms. Val.
Present.
Ms. Jones.
Here.
Ms. Cousins. Mr. Davis.
Present.
We have a quorum.
I first would like to introduce the Honorable Judge Rachel Woodiest, who is here from the 22nd Judicial Circuit to swear in new board members to the Board of Election, or to the Board of Education. We'll first begin with our new board member, Ms. Sadie Weiss. If you could come, please take the oath of office.
Okay. I state your name.
Sadie Weiss,
Do hereby swear upon my oath
do hereby swear upon my oath
that I do not hold any other elected office
that I do not hold any other elected office
in the city of St. Louis or state of Missouri,
in the city of St. Louis or the state of Missouri,
and that I possess all of the qualifications required by state law
that I possess all of the qualifications required by state law
to serve as a member
to serve as a member
of the Board of Education of the city of St. Louis.
of the Board of Education of the city of St. Louis.
I am not a party to any contract
I am not a party to any contract
with or claim against the board,
with or claim against the board,
either directly or indirectly.
either directly or indirectly.
I will not, while serving as a member of the board,
I will not, while serving as a member of the board,
become interested in any contract
become interested in any contract
or claim against the board or claim against the board directly or indirectly,
or claim against the board either directly or indirectly,
or as an agent or employee
or as an agent or employee
of any individual, firm, or corporation
of any individual, firm, or corporation
which is so interested.
which is so interested.
I will not be influenced during my term of office
I will not be influenced during my term of office
by any consideration
by any consideration
except that of merit and fitness
except that of merit and fitness
in the appointment of officers
in the appointment of officers
and the engagement of employees.
and the engagement of employees.
I will faithfully fulfill all duties
I will faithfully fulfill all duties
of the office of school board member
of the office of school board member
and will serve St. Louis Public Schools
and will serve St. Louis Public Schools
to the best of my abilities as such.
to the best of my abilities as such.
Congratulations.
Congratulations and welcome, Ms. Weiss. You can join us at the dais at your convenience. We'd now like to introduce Mr. Tracy Hikes as our next newest member to please come and take the oath of office in front of Judge Woodiest.
I'm good. It's a little long, so be ready. I state your name.
I, Tracy Hikes,
Do hereby swear upon my oath
do hereby swear upon my oath
that I do not hold any other elected office
that I do not hold any other elected office
in the city of St. Louis
in the city of St. Louis
or state of Missouri,
or state of Missouri,
and that I possess
and I possess
all of the qualifications required by state law
all the qualifications required by state law
to serve as a member
to serve as a member
of the Board of Education of the city of St. Louis.
of the Board of Education of the city of St. Louis.
I am not a party to any contract with
I am not a party to any contract with
or claim against the board,
or claim against the board,
either directly or indirectly.
either directly or indirectly.
I will not, while serving as a member of the board,
I will not, while serving as a member of the board,
become interested in any contract with
become interested in any contract with
or claim against the board,
or claim against the board,
directly or indirectly,
directly or indirectly,
or as an agent or employee
or as an agent or employee
of any individual, firm, or corporation,
of any individual firm
or corporation.
or corporation.
Sorry.
That's okay.
which is so interested,
I
I will not be influenced during my term of office
will not be influenced in my term of office
by any consideration,
of any consideration,
by any consideration except that of merit and fitness.
except that of merit and fitness,
In the appointment of officers
in the appointment of officers
and the engagement of employees,
and engagement of employees.
I will faithfully fulfill all duties
I will faithfully fulfill all duties
of the office of school board member
of the office of school board member
and will serve St. Louis Public Schools
and will serve St. Louis Public Schools
to the best of my abilities
To the-
as such.
to the best of my abilities as such.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations and welcome, Mr. Hikes. Thank you so much, Judge Woodius. We are going to take a brief break before we begin our meeting. I do just want to point out that this was the first time in approximately 3.5 years that all 7 members of the Board of Education are sitting here elected by the people of the city of St. Louis. So we'll adjourn this special meeting and we'll resume in a couple minutes at 6:30.
Check, check.
Good evening once again, everyone. If we could take our seats so we can resume the regular work session meeting. Thank you. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Ms. Henry, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Hikes. Ms. Weiss. Yes. Ms. Hubbard. Here. Ms. Val.
Present.
Ms. Jones.
Here.
Ms. Cousins.
Yes.
Mr. Davis.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The next topic on the agenda is our annual officer elections. Dr. Williams.
Good evening, everyone. Mrs. Henry, would you please run the election for president this evening? Thank you.
It shall be the duty of the president to preside at all meetings of the board, preserve order, enforce rules, sign all bonds, letters, agreements, deeds, and leases ordered to be executed by the board, and appoint the chairpersons and members of standing and ad hoc committees. The president of the board shall serve as an ex officio member of any and all standing and ad hoc committees of the board. The president shall appoint the board's representative to professional organizations in which the board holds membership. It shall also be the duty of the president to act as an ex officio member of the Board of Trustees of the Missouri Botanical Garden pursuant to the provisions of the last will and testament of the late Henry Shaw. It shall also be the duty of the president each year immediately after the selection of a depository of the Board of Education for the succeeding year to notify the treasurer of the state of Missouri and the collector of revenue of the city of St. Louis to make all payments of money apportioned, belonging or distributed to this board to said depository as indicated by board approval. The floor is now open for nominations for the role of president of the Board of Education of the City of St. Louis.
I nominate Mrs. Tony Cousins.
Are there any other nominations? Are there any questions or discussions? This will be a roll call vote, so please name your choice for board president. Mr. Hikes.
Tony Cousins.
Ms. Weiss. Ms. Hubbard.
Tony Cousins.
Ms. Val.
Tony Cousins.
Ms. Jones.
Antoinette Cousins.
Ms. Cousins.
Tony Cousins.
Mr. Davis.
I'll stick with Tony Cousins.
Mrs. Cousins is now appointed as board president of the city of St. Louis Public Schools of the city of St. Louis.
Thank you, Ms. Henry. Thank you, board. Ms. Henry, I'm leading you for vice president nominations. And I'm sorry to read the terms for the vice president.
In the absence of the president, the vice president shall serve as president pro tem and perform the duties of the president. In case of a vacancy in the presidency through death, disability, absence from the country, or other situations rendering the elected president unable or unavailable to perform the duties of office, the vice president shall serve as president pro tem until the president resumes the office or the board declares the office vacant and elects a new president to serve out the term.
Are there any discussions or questions for the vice presidents? I open the floor for nominations.
I'd like to nominate Matt Davis for vice president.
Are there any other nominees? Any other discussions? Ms. Henry?
Without any other candidates, if it pleases the board, we'll do a vote of acclamation. Could everyone say aye for a vote of Matthew Davis as vice president of the board?
Aye.
Aye.
Are there any nays? Matthew Davis has earned office of vice president of the board.
Ms. Henry, can you read the secretary descriptions, please?
The secretary shall execute such documents and perform such acts as required to be executed and performed only by an officer appointed by and directly responsible to the board. The secretary shall have custody of the books of records of board proceedings and perform such other duties as the law requires and the board assigns. The secretary shall promptly furnish copies of all communications directed to the board to each board member. Whenever possible, such copies should be furnished in time to be present for board action if appropriate and the next scheduled administration, regular business, or special board meeting. It shall also be the duty of the secretary to cause written responses to be made to questions or requests for information made by speakers at board meetings when such questions or requests are not answered in the meeting.
Are there any questions or discussions for the role of secretary? I open the floor for nominations for secretary.
I'd like to nominate Donna Jones.
Second.
Any other nominations? Any discussions? Ms. Henry?
Again, with only one candidate being recommended, vote of acclamation. All in favor, aye.
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 Are there any nays? With that, Ms. Donna Jones has been appointed secretary of the board.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Thank you, Ms. Henry. Dr. Williams?
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, once again, and congratulations to our new board members who are joining us this evening and our elected board members who are now elected to their offices. So let's give them another rousing round of applause. This evening, we'd like to spotlight Egypt Hills. Egypt is here this evening with us from Sumner High School. I see her principal, Dr. Sean Nichols, in the audience, and we are really excited to welcome Jermaine Smith, who is doing so much of the work over there to coordinate our arts at Sumner High School. Let me tell you a little bit about Egypt before she performs an original piece this evening. Egypt Hills was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. She moved to St. Louis with her family in the summer of 2021. She currently attends Sumner High School and is the middle child of two brothers, one of whom also attends Sumner High School with her. She is a student in the dance pathway and has been on the honor roll every semester of her high school career. She is the 10th grade spokesperson for Sumner High School students. In her dance career, she has performed in 7 Sumner showcases, the Marriott Cybersecurity Conference, and Missouri History Museum, and will be performing at COCA Showcase very soon. Egypt's future plan is to enroll in early college next year to earn her associate's degree with her high school diploma. She eventually hopes to attend a university to major in computer science to be a web developer. Let's welcome Egypt Hill, Sumner High School, and the piece that she's performing this evening it's her own choreography, I Can't Stop Me by Twice. Let's welcome her. Thank you once again to Egypt Hill. Our students are our greatest resource and our only hope for the future. John F. Kennedy says that, and we borrow that thinking as we showcase talent every 2 weeks here in the St. Louis Public Schools at our board meetings. We center the work of our scholars, our students. We love them. They are our greatest resource. And I want to thank Dr. Letitia Smith and Kay Harrelson. Every 2 weeks, they bring us the best talent from across our school district to showcase the work from pre-K to grade 12, the work that we're doing here to ensure that every scholar, every day in every classroom has a high-quality, world-class education and opportunities they so richly deserve here in St. Louis Public Schools. So thank you so very much this evening, Dr. Nichols, the Sumner community, and all of our scholars for the work that you do. I'd like to invite our Chief Financial Officer this evening, Mrs. Angie Banks. She is going to frame the work around our budget, our financial stewardship, and the FY 23-24 budget. So thank you very much, CFO Banks.
Well, good afternoon. Congratulations to our new board members.
Thank you.
I don't know why they keep putting me up after kids. It's just not a good thing. So tonight we'll be going through, at a pretty high level, our 23-24 proposed budget. Of course, we always start off with our financial objectives, which are to maintain full accreditation, align our resources with our transformation plan, maintain financial sustainability, and have high expectations and accountability. And of course, we're really looking for that long-term strategic look as we go forward. Over this kind of budget season, we did have some community feedback. We had a budget forum. We received several questions and some feedback from the community, and I just wanted to share it with the rest of the community to see the types of things that were being asked. A few questions that were addressed at the budget forum, and just some general feedback. So I want to make sure that everyone knows that we're always available for additional feedback. There is a Contact Us button on our website where you can always provide some feedback, and there are other options for feedback as well as through our Panorama survey. Of course, at regular board meetings, you can contact your school principals directly and such. So, kind of on to our proposed revenue. If you recall, at the February 28th work session, we only presented the fiscal year 24 preliminary revenue. We made a few adjustments to that preliminary revenue back then, and you'll be able to see that on a comparison slide as we kind of move through the presentation. But the highlights of the changes are really GOB revenue, an increase in property and sales taxes, some insurance recovery, and building sales. And then, of course, with Prop S, we have budgeted some interest income that was added. And for debt service, there was an increase in property taxes as well concerning revenue for fiscal year 24. As we move on to expenditures, and I'm just going to kind of take it in big buckets by category. So looking at the general operating budget, you know, from an expenditure standpoint, we have kind of a staffing model that we use based on DESE pupil-teacher ratios, and we use our projected enrollment. And we've talked about the weighted student formula for our discretionary funds. That's how funds are allocated out to schools based on the student demographics. So each student in a school is allocated $200, and the weighted piece for this year, similar to what we did with our ESSER funding, ESSER 2 in particular, all students will receive $200, or the schools will receive $200 for each school, for each student, But in addition, there will be $25 for each SPED student, $25 for each ELL student, and $25 for each student in transition. As we talk about allocating these funds, we really do it in several different buckets, which I've identified here. And you can see the percentage that will go to each line item for extra service, supplies, awards and incentives, furniture, technology supplies, and meeting expenses. Moving on to local grants. These are just some of the major local grants that I think most people are familiar with, and a little bit on some of the grants that they support. So as far as Parsons Blewett, they've been very good at providing funding for gifted certification, reading certification for our teachers, in addition to supporting the St. Louis Plan. And again, this is just high level because there's a lot more that they do. These are just some highlights. From the St. Louis Public Schools Foundation, they provide trauma-informed therapists for our schools. I think there are 4 or 5 that they're funding. They're supporting our Learn to Earn or Learn and Earn program where our students have internships and are earning some money, and also providing support to our Early College Academy. All that's from the St. Louis Public Schools Foundation, in addition to other various activities that they support. The Simon Fund is an endowment where it's really for special education services and programs where we receive the interest income off of this endowment, and it's usually $600,000 to $1 million per year, depending. And resources are budgeted for special education use. We had a presentation several weeks ago about the Verizon Learning Labs, which that's very exciting, and that's in several schools, and I believe that's going to be expanding. That is another one of our local grants that we are really enjoying. I guess you can probably remember the excitement from some of the staff as they presented that. And a new local grant is the Promise Neighborhood Initiative, which I don't know a whole lot about this, but that is really a major grant that St. Louis Public Schools is a partner with Urban Strategies. In my understanding, it's about $20 million over 5 years, and it's really focusing on the 63106 area code, and there are several schools that fall within that area code, including Jefferson, Carver, Columbia, Carlane, and Vashon. And it's a pretty broad number of things that they will be providing, including the focus areas of advancing equity, delivering evidence-based services, supporting resource sustainability, and meeting initiative goals. So I'm sure that you'll be hearing a lot more of this. My understanding is that for next fiscal year, the district's allocation will be in the neighborhood of $450,000. State and federal grants. I wanted to provide a little bit of information on the different types of grants that the district receives and kind of what they support. Of course, all of these grants have very specialized areas that they do support, and there's lots of compliance related to this funding. So I'm sure everyone's heard of Title I, but you might not know that there are multiple titles, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So just a tad bit of information on kind of what's supported on each one of those different grants. Very interesting is Title IV when it says a holistic education. Well, what does that mean? There are really 3 kind of key areas in Title IV, including a well-rounded education, safe and healthy students, and effective use of technology. So the majority of these are federal grants, but really in green, those are a couple of the state grants that I wanted to highlight. The Reading Literacy Program, which supports about 30 elementary reading teachers. That funding began about 2 years ago, so we've had that about $2.4 million for the last couple years, and that has been renewed for next fiscal year, is my understanding. So, as we talk about long-term sustainability, that's certainly something that we'll be keeping an eye on, because I believe those reading teachers have just been phenomenal for our students. And that's something that we really have to look at year to year to see whether or not that's going to be funded. So if it's not funded, what is our plan? Because we certainly need those reading teachers. So that's put into kind of our longer term planning as we consider all of our options. There's a violence prevention grant. I think that we're in the process of applying for some of these grants. There seems to be so many grants available right now. But the violence prevention, I believe our safety and security team is working on options to, I think it's a STOP grant or something like that. But that would fall into the state grant. But in total, we probably manage in the neighborhood of, 50 or 60 different grants, each having its own specific compliance requirements. So, and there's a lot on the table. So lots of opportunity. Kind of moving on to Proposition S. As far as our expenditures are concerned, we have Mr. Watson and his team have identified a number of projects that he's presented over the last several months. So for next fiscal year, I've just identified these items as the programs that we think will actually be completed. So that's about $10 million in Proposition S that we consider will be completed at the end of next year, although there will be many others that will begin with our $135 million plus of bond proceeds. So I left the good stuff for later in the presentation, all of our staffing updates. I know this is what people are most interested in. We already talked about for next year that we're going to have a salary increase of 3%, so that's approved, in addition to the retention incentives that everyone is aware of that began this year. So budgeted or $2,500 per semester for the retention incentives for full-time staff with the criteria that will be established. Of course, we've talked about the literacy grant and the 30-plus elementary reading teachers. When we talk about some of the challenges and changes regarding staffing that are upon us, in Title I, we have many staff, but based on some allocation changes, all schools cannot afford their academic instructional coach and family community specialists as they are this year. And the way that works is that each school has an allocation based on their student demographics. So it's different for each school. And as I mentioned, there's a change in the allocation, therefore it's a little bit change in the funding. So, of the 56 to 60 title schools, there are about 33 title schools that are in this predicament where they can't afford their current staffing levels. So we've been reviewing various options over the last several weeks, and we'll be having some staffing meetings the week of May 8th to finalize those decisions. That's the reason why we're not bringing forward today the detailed budgets that you would typically approve at this time, or have, so that you can start reviewing for approval at the next meeting. We do anticipate that any reductions in the AIC or family community specialist staff, that there will be opportunities for them to move into existing vacancies in their current school or within the district. And we intend to hold salaries harmless for this year as we're kind of moving into this new phase of funding for those positions. Regarding our comprehensive schools and positions, DESE, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, has not yet identified the next group of comprehensive schools, as this is the last year for the current group. So without that information, knowing that the schools may change, we certainly cannot make specific plans. Therefore, at this time, those comprehensive positions in those schools are going to be released so that they may go into existing vacancies in their school or within the district. We anticipate that DESE will determine the new comprehensive schools either in late summer or early fall. So that is the plan right now. And again, we would be looking to hold harmless those salaries for the staff as they are released from those comprehensive positions. On a brighter note, what we're planning to do with our principals, the principal secretaries, and the assistant principals is to move them to a 12-month status. Currently, there's a combination of either 11-month or 11.5-month status for those positions. Moving to 12-month, it'll be more consistent with surrounding school districts. It will help to increase the pay, hopefully to maintain those staff. And we think it will also assist as we're making some other changes within the schools so that they have more time to do the planning that is required to run their schools. Items that are under consideration: equity pay. We made a 3-year commitment to equity pay at $3 per year. We're still working on that framework, working with the union and the board and cabinet level. You know, equity can be very hard. Everyone's definition is a little bit different. How do we appropriately compensate staff, especially as they are supporting our most underserved population? That's what we hope to do with equity pay and the framework that is identified. Similarly, we hope that with the equity pay work that's going on, it will inform a weighted student formula, as we're also working with other urban districts and other districts in general just on different ways to fund schools in a more equitable way. So similar to how we're doing our discretionary funding for the schools, we're looking for some type of a weighted formula to do across the schools. So how do we provide staffing to the schools in a more equitable way? And ultimately, with all this work that we're doing with equity pay and weighted student formula, we hope to have a sustainable staffing model as we continue the work, particularly with our partners, and as the citywide plan is coming to a conclusion. So I know there's a lot of numbers up here on the staffing summary. And I just said that we don't have all the numbers precisely, but this is just a possible way that the staffing may look. And basically what I did, and you can see on the leftmost column, is really how we categorize our staff. And hopefully they're pretty self-explanatory, but our certified administrators basically, or our principals, superintendents, network superintendents. Obviously we have our certified teachers, everybody knows who those are, and I really broke out the ILAs and the BLAs as those staff that are in, as we've had so many shortages with our teachers. So what I did is I just took a look what's in our system right now as to how many different positions are authorized. And basically the authorized means that if we had enough staff to fill every position, we'd have the budget to pay for them. We're authorizing those many positions. That's over 4,000 positions across all funds that are authorized. When you look at how many of those positions are filled, there's right under 3,000. 60 staff members are on some type of leave. So if we consider taking all of those authorized positions, all 4,062, and give them the 3% increase for next year, the total cost would be $210.5 million. However, if we only maintained the existing filled positions, the roughly 3,000 plus the 60 people on leave, gave them the 3% increase next year, that staffing cost would be right at $162 million. So we anticipate that for the actual staffing for next year, we're going to fall somewhere in between that 162 and the 210. So I wanted just to give you some reference points as we're putting together the detailed budgets as to where things may fall. So, on to the big numbers. The 24 proposed district budgets. And I know I have more than just the proposed budgets up here, so I just want to walk you through this. So the first column, those are our fund categories. Revenues on top, expenditures at the bottom. The second column is the current year, fiscal year 2023 budget that was approved by the board, and that was back in May or June of 2022. The third column, at the February work session, again, we only presented the fiscal year 2024 preliminary revenue budgets of the $454.9 million, but I have removed the Prop S bond proceeds, which were 135, because we actually got those this year. They shouldn't have been in 24. So you can really kind of disregard the 2024 preliminary expenditures because we didn't discuss that at all. So the fourth column is our current year projection as to where we think we're going to land in those various categories for 2023. You see that the projected 2023 budgets are a little different than the approved 2023 budgets. Of course, things change as the year progresses. The thing I would like to note is that with the 2023 projected general operating expenditures, $312 million, as compared to what was approved, the $302 million. Now, things are always changing as I'm looking at these budgets. I don't think we're going to be as high as $312 million, but if it appears that we're going to be above the approved budget expenditure, general operating budget of $302 million, I'm going to have to bring forth a budget amendment as required by the state. So the fifth column is our fiscal year 2024 proposed budget, which is really what we're all here to see. You'll note that there have been some updates from the 2024 preliminary revenue. However, I really want to compare our proposed 24 budget to our projected 23 budget, because that's where we make all of our comparisons year over year. And those are the differences that are highlighted in our percent change and dollar variance columns, the final two columns. So, the fiscal year 2024 proposed budget includes $465.8 million in revenue, a 27% or $156 million reduction from the fiscal year 2023 projection. And this is due primarily to a GOB reduction, which is really state revenue and E-rate reimbursements. Those are the major differences in GOB. And also for the Prop S bond proceeds. Obviously, we're not going to sell another $135 million of bonds, but you will note the $2 million in Prop S interest income. You know, over the life, the next 3-ish years of the Prop S bond projects, we'll be investing those proceeds until we draw them down to pay the projects off. We'll probably earn $12 to $15 million in interest income. The fiscal year 2024 proposed budget includes $483.5 million in expenditures, a 2% or $13.5 million increase from the fiscal year 2023 projection. You'll see that the biggest increase is in GOB, general operating budget, which is primarily going to be for staffing costs, transportation, utilities, and some allowances, as we're going to be in our last year of ESSER spending next year. So of course we've made the commitment that we're going to spend all that money in ESSER 3. So there'll be some shifting going along. We'll be making some adjustments that will keep the board apprised of, but we just want to have the kind of that wiggle room in GOB. One thing I can think of offhand is summer school. This year we're paying for summer school in ESSER. That's probably $4.5 million. If we have enough ESSER projects next year and we don't want to spend that money on ESSER 3, we'll move those expenses back into the general operating budget. Debt service is another area you'll see is higher. That's going to be because now we have to make interest payments on the Prop S bonds. And I know we're showing decreases in, grants, but we certainly anticipate that those numbers are going to change as I've talked about a lot of the grant opportunities. So those are our budgets for fiscal year 2024. The next slide just shows it graphically for our revenues by source, whether it's locally sourced. There's not much in county, but also state and federal. And from a local standpoint, the majority of that revenue is property and sales taxes. And the next slide really is our expenditures that we anticipate for fiscal year 2024 and where they will be spent in the major categories. And you'll note that, of course, the largest percentage are going to be in salaries and benefits, about 61%, which might seem low. We do have the Prop S that typically is not going to be in there, but the district has a lot of outsourced expenditures that many districts do not. When other districts hear that we're only spending about 62, 65% sometimes, you'll often hear that other districts are spending 75 to 80% of their expenses in salaries and, benefits. So what are our next steps? Well, we certainly have to go through those staffing meetings the week of May 8th to make those decisions that we discussed. After we make those decisions, we have to make sure that those are included in the detailed budgets, pull all of that together, and provide that information to the board in plenty of time for review and consideration so that we can get the board approved. And I do apologize. It won't be on May 9th because we'll still be in those staffing meetings. That should say May 30th at the work session. So with that, I'll take any questions that you may have.
What does it mean when you say to hold harmless?
Well, basically, as for an example, I'm an AIC, maybe, I am now going to move back into a teacher vacancy at the school where the pay may not be as high as my AIC salary. Well, we're going to let you keep that salary for at least a year as we're going through this transition period.
I just had a couple of questions, Ms. Banks. First of all, in terms of the staffing vacancies, so we have overall as a district over 1,000 staffing vacancies. What is, I'd say a normal year, but if you compare to normal years, what do we normally have at this point in the year in terms of vacancies?
That's a good question. I don't know if I can answer that, but I will say that the vacancies, the information that I pulled is probably, those vacancies are going to show up higher because we have all the ILAs and BLAs where typically we would have those as teachers. So that's probably about 350 vacancies that shouldn't really be showing up in those numbers. I know that there are quite a few vacancies in other areas where we have added positions. I know that in facilities, there tend to be lots of vacancies and lots of turnover in custodians and such. But we can certainly get you some more accurate information as to the timing and vacancies.
Yeah, and maybe that's a HR question for another presentation. I wanted to talk a little bit about the other staffing slides just to sort of walk through it a little bit. So when we talk about the AICs and the family community specialists, could you just explain what that means, the Title I dollars and how those are funded and why that creates an issue?
Yes. So historically, The AIC position was a mandate for all schools, for all title schools. And that was a decision that was made, and we've been kind of on that mandate for many years. So as I mentioned, the schools get an allocation of their title funding depending on their student demographics. So some schools couldn't fully support that position, but since it was a mandate, the district would cover the shortage, if you will. It has been identified that we may no longer do that. So each school must be able to fully afford the positions that are supporting the building. And that's where it was identified which schools really could not afford all of the staff that were on their roster.
And that's because the Title I dollars are based on how many students are in a building?
Yes.
And so if you have a lower, I'm just throwing it out, if you have a lower enrolled building that has one AIC and one FCS, they may not be able to afford it based on the student population, whereas if you have 100 extra kids in the building up the street, they could afford that staff.
That is correct.
And was it DESE that indicated that the way that we have been covering for that is no longer acceptable, or maybe never was acceptable, but now are telling us they're going to?
That is correct. We actually had a monitoring last month.
Okay. Thank you.
Hi, Ms. Banks. My question is about the local grants. And under St. Louis Public Schools Foundation, you talked about the trauma-informed therapist. Are all of these paid for by the St. Louis Public Schools Foundation?
Yes. I believe that there were either 4 or 5 positions, those specific positions that the foundation funded. I believe it was this year. I don't know if they were all filled, and I believe they're on budgeted to be funded next year by the foundation.
Is it up to the foundation to select this particular schools that they want these trauma-informed therapists to service?
That is a great question. I am not sure. I don't know if any of my...
I don't know. We had 3 high schools that did not have this service, and they really needed it. That's why I'm asking.
Dr. Bender? Thank you.
Yes. There are 4 funded by the foundation. Next year there'll be a 5th. That is through GOB. That will be for CVPA and CSMB. I know at board meetings we've heard about a desire for a therapist at Vashon. There's one there part-time now. The therapists will be assigned to the schools based on needs. So I'm working on that with Velva Holloman, who is over social workers and therapists, to determine where the best fit is for those folks for next year.
Who determines the need of this?
We look at data and what is going on at the schools, just who is facing the most challenges. I think we could probably use a therapist in every school, but we are going where the most need is, yes.
Wow. Okay. The Learn and Earn, and it's under St. Louis Public Schools Foundation as well. I heard it touted on television recently as something that the city of St. Louis was doing. I thought this was something that St. Louis Public School was part of our curriculum.
Yes, it is. Actually, we have support from the city of St. Louis, internally within our general operating budget, and as noted by some of our partners as well.
So in the Learn and Earn program, are they being paid by the city of St. Louis, or does the school district outsource our payment through some other organization?
Yeah, well, we partner with, I believe it's Slate. Slate is our major partner, and they have outsourced the payment to the students.
So can anyone recall how long the Learn and Earn program has been in existence in the school district?
Dr. Bender?
Yes, this is the second year for Learn and Earn. When it was originally brought about, it was seen to, Dr. Adams requested it as a 3-year pilot. So the district gave initial funds, but then the city of St. Louis gave matching funds.
Okay. The Promise Neighborhood Initiative, and you mentioned that it was primarily in the zip code of 63106. Is this, who funds this particular program?
Deputy Willis, please.
Good evening. The Promised Neighborhood Grant is under the Urban Strategies Initiative, and it is centered on that zip code, that particular zip code in 5 of our schools at this time. We have other schools that are in that zip code, and it might be expanded through the run of the 5 years of the grant. But right now, that's the zip code area that's covered.
So this is $20 million over 5 years for just these particular schools?
It's $20.8 million for urban strategies. Our take on that is about $14 million. And our first year, we have $450,000, as Angie mentioned.
And so what is the criteria for the schools? How do they get their monies from this program? I mean, other than just being in this particular zip code, because I know all of our schools have lots of needs, but
yes, ma'am,
there's a lot of money.
The impact of this grant is going to be very widespread, and it will include being able to hire for certain staffing positions, key positions in our district, expansion of classrooms, and just working with these particular schools in this zone to find out where the need is. And there's a host of partners that are working with Urban Strategies to make sure that this happens. But you have caught us right at the beginning of the grant planning. We've received the grant, and now we're breaking down the budget, and then we'll be able to have a more robust presentation for you when we find out exactly where we're going to go with this first year. And then we'll build out the grant from there.
Will there be a place where the public can go to keep abreast of how the program is functioning and where they might get this help if they want to have their child involved in the program?
Yes, ma'am. Everything that we'll be doing under that grant will be public, and we'll be soliciting the help of many of the people in the schools to support it.
So I guess I just want to ask one more time, 63106, why did they choose that one? Why was this chosen? Because, I mean, I'm in 63136. We don't have much of anything going on over there. So I'm asking, how do you determine where to put all this money when you have schools that get nothing, hardly?
It's going to be a very challenging process to figure out where we're going to go with the need, but to your point, these are key positions that'll be in support of the schools. So it'll be a little bit of funding a certain program or project, but it will also be acquiring teachers and expanding classrooms and things that basically all of them need. So I think that when you see the entire plan, it'll help you understand it just a little bit better. Again, we're just in the initial stages of plotting out where this is going to go. Of course, what we submitted in the grant is the outline or the blueprint that we'll use going forward. But at this time, that zip code area, the Promised Neighborhood area, that was selected by Urban Strategies because that's where they wanted to build in that community. They want to build community in that zone.
And Urban Strategies is the organization that is funding this.
They are the organization that was the lead in obtaining the grant. We were signed on as a partner to their grant. This is something, Ms. Jones, that we've been trying for several years, and it has not been successful. And this year, the grant was awarded, and it's a very exciting opportunity. But for the very reasons you said, we want to take some time and look at how we're going to implement that grant.
All right, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. A report will be coming.
You can come back, Ms. Willis. So it's safe to say from the question that Ms. Jones has asked, I guess my question would be, what role did the district actually play in going after that particular grant?
Well,
were we just listed as partners, or did we have actually like steps and processes to be a part of that grant?
Yes, ma'am. We had steps and processes. It was led by our former director of development, and prior to that, other members of our staff had worked on that grant. So this is something that they've been trying for quite some time. But most recently, the successful grant was done by our former grant writer. And basically, it required calling a lot of our administrators together in one room and going through some of the things that basically our wish list and finding out where we could get support and then sharing that with Urban Strategies. And then they built the grant around some of those things.
So would it be safe to say that Urban Strategies, being the leader of like the lead on this particular grant, that they're really focusing on their catchment area, which is kind of answering a question to Ms. Jones, because it seems like that is their catchment area?
Yes, ma'am. They have targeted the area, and it has 5 of our schools. Actually, there are more schools in that zone, but we're starting with the 5, and there's a possibility of expansion as we go forward in the grant.
Okay.
And again, that report is coming. We have a meeting, one of our first meetings tomorrow. We've met internally with our staff. It seems like everybody is very excited to get going, but we still have a lot of nuts and bolts to take care of.
And I think the challenge, probably not on you all, but the challenge is that we read about it in the paper. We weren't kind of really abreast as to know and understand what was going on in regards to that grant. So that's probably why you're getting the questions that you're getting from
Fair
us,
enough.
because we had no knowledge of this until I saw it in the paper, and we were getting calls from other people inquiring about it.
Yes, I completely understand. That was unfortunate because the actual grant owner did the story, and our quotes were not included in that story, but we're making up for it. In fact, our Director of Communications has done a second interview from our perspective. So we will be countering that as we go forward, because it's important. If this grant is working out for us, it's important that people understand what part we do play in it.
Thank you. Any more questions for Ms. Willis?
I do have one last question. Who's collecting the data?
Our Urban Strategies will be collecting data.
But St. Louis Public School, will you also?
Yes, we're a part of it. Yes, ma'am.
I know you're a part of it, but will we have access to all the data since they're in our schools?
Yes. Everything.
All right.
Yes, ma'am.
And this is a grant from the Department of Education?
Yes.
Okay.
And they're very involved in the direction of the grant.
Thank you, Ms. Willis. Any questions for Ms. Banks? More questions for Ms. Banks? I have one, Ms. Banks. I know we're talking about Title I funds, and I know we're having to face some decisions in regards to that. Can you tell me what all Title I funds actually cover? What salaries? Is it just the FCSs and the ICAs, or is it other positions as well?
There are other positions. You know, Title I is really to provide supplemental support for title schools and families. So there are supplemental ELA and math teachers. There are, and it might not just be Title I, but it could be Title II, III, or IV. I know there are like dropout prevention type positions, PBIS positions. So there are probably 8 or 9 different types of positions that we fund on title. You know.
Okay. Any other questions for Ms. Banks? Thank you, Ms. Banks.
Thank you.
Thank you to our Chief Financial Officer, Mrs. Angie Banks. This is about mission-critical budgeting, and so for our fiscal year 23-24, we are really looking at how we allocate finite resources to prioritize organizational needs. So we'll continue the conversation. Thank you very, very much. Board President Cousins, that concludes the interim superintendent's reports this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. If it's okay with the board, I would like to move the agenda around just a little bit. I want to kind of focus more on the board continuing training and then make the consent agenda after that, if that's okay with everyone. Thank you. With that, we will have the great Miss Janet. Ms. Janet Tilley will actually be providing training to the board for the board continuing training, and she's going to kind of go in depth as to what governance actually looks like regarding a board, a school board. Ms. Tilly has been one of our best go-tos to make sure we're doing as we should as a board. So Ms. Tilly, we hand it over to you.
Well, thank you, President Cousins. And congratulations, Sadie and Tracy. Welcome. Welcome to the fun part, okay? All right, you did the election. That was the easy part. This part is going to be, well, it will be fun, okay? All right, we'll just do it to you that way. My name is Janet Tilley for Tracy and for Sadie, and I work for the Missouri School Boards Association, and I have been there for almost 11 years. Prior to that, I was a teacher, district administrator, mom, all of those things. My major role with MSBA has been in the training that's mandated to you by the state of Missouri. Not everybody knows that anytime you're elected to in the public schools to the Board of Education, that you are mandated to go through 18 and a half hours of training. You get training in finance, you get training in law, the Sunshine Law, student achievement, you know, everything that you can possibly even imagine. And then annually, all of the board members have to go through an additional hour and a half of training, kind of refresher, as they call it. So welcome, and I know that the last time I saw you, the two of you, I gave you your forms for signing up for your board training, so do it as quickly as possible, get it done, and you'll be so much happier, all right? But just know that we're there to help and to support you. My role now is a little different. I don't go out and do the basic board training anymore. My work is really more with the research part of it and doing some very specialized kind of training and support for boards. I work primarily with you, with St. Louis, with Kansas City, and then my local board in Columbia. And one of the things that I'm just going to kind of, the rest of you know this, so just sit tight, all right? Okay, you know, see what's going on Facebook, or I think the cards are playing. I don't know. You can check and see, you know, what's going on over there. But part of my work as I was helping boards learn, you know, to become, you know, to know what they're doing and all of those kinds of things, I had questions in my head about the statement that I kept seeing or hearing, and that is that school boards do have an impact on student achievement, student performance, student success. And my thought was, okay, well, how? All right, because you're not in the classroom, you're not, you know, you're not in central office, you know, you're at the governance level. I call it being at the top of the arch, all right? And so I dug into this some more, and so I've had the opportunity in the last really 7 years to really research, learn, understand, and study, and what good school boards do. And what we have found from the research is that good school boards, if they will follow these 10 core principles, I sound like some infomercial salesman, I know, all right, a little Tony Robbins stuff here. But, and probably you don't even know who Tony Robbins is, okay, which is great, okay, shows how old I am. But if in fact the boards will actually implement these 10 core principles, there is a positive correlation, not causation, because you're not in the classroom, but a positive correlation to increase student achievement and student performance in any school district. And we're talking urban school districts, districts that have large challenges, you know, the suburban school districts. It can happen. And so my thought was, fabulous, all right? Let's just go tell all the school boards that they need to do these 10 principles and check, you know, we can get this done. Well, it's not just about theory, it's about action. And so how do we implement these principles? What does it, I always go back to the whole thing of what does it look like? You know, when I was working with literacy people, I would always say, if you walk in a classroom, how do you know that good literacy instruction is going on? What do you see? What do you hear? What do you experience? And so I felt that same way about these 10 principles. And I thought, well, let's just see, you know, if I can find, you know, what are those core operational action steps. And so I wrote this continuum. And it has been revised now for about 8 different times. And I think I'm finally at a point where I feel pretty good about it. But I also know that I can't just go to a board and say, ooh, here, do this, it's going to be great. We need to field test it. We need to put it in the hands of real live boards and board members. And so that's why I came to President Davis at the time, Vice President Cousins, flip-flop now, but that's why I came to them and I said, do you think the St. Louis board would be willing to field test this for me? To be able to try to implement it, to take, and we're talking about the long story here. It's not going to be short. We're talking about at least 12 to 18 months where we would work together. We would learn. I would help you with actionable steps of implementing some of these particular principles. We would self-assess. We would revise, we would move forward, and you would help me to make this continuum better and stronger. And they said yes, because, you know, I offered them $20. And so, no, you're not really. But anyway, they said yes. And I think it's partly because we have a relationship. And, you know, I'm a little stronger with these people over here than my newer ones, but I love you also. But we've developed a sense of trust and love and respect. And so because we have that foundation of a relationship, I think we can make this work. And I remember those teachers who were here, you know, earlier this month, so excited about the Verizon Labs. I feel the same way, right? We get nerdy about it. So the board has approved that we move forward with this, and hopefully you're going to be okay with it as well. This is going to be different from your basic training that you're going to receive. This is going to be more intense, and it's going to be more specific than what you're going to receive just as your general training. Okay? All right. Did I do all right with that, Tony, Matt? Okay. All right. All right. Okay. So in order to do this, I have in my head a process. And what that process will be is that it begins tonight with asking you to identify from these 10 core principles what are 2 or 3 that you think are the most critical for you as a board. And these should be ones that you're not necessarily strong with. Does that make sense? Where you need to grow and where you need to improve. The other thing, too, is that maybe it also will include your thinking about bringing on with a new superintendent, you know, and creating a new team of which are the principles that you think for the next 6 months we should really focus deep with these particular ones. Are you all right with that, Miss Donna? I'm just reading your eyes. Okay, all right, got it. Okay, Grandma milked. Okay, I got it. Okay, so anyway, that for the next 6 months, we're really going to focus deeply on these particular principles. I would love for you to be able to say, ooh, let's do all 10, but you won't have any success with that. You can't. The law of diminishing returns will tell you that if you try to focus on more than 3, your likelihood of success is like 0. So we're going to focus on 3. And in a minute, because in my email to you, I don't know if the 2 of you got it or not, you did. Okay, great. Is that I wanted you to think about this before you came in tonight. And in a minute, you're going to share with me the ones that you personally, individually think are the ones that need the focus. But let me kind of explain the rest of the process before we do that. So you will pick the 3 that you think, yep, we're going to move forward with these. These are the most important. And what I'm going to do then is that I'm going to create some hybrid learning experiences for you, because to try to find a day or time where all of us could be together, and including, you know, Dr. Williams and including Dr. Scarlett as well, will be nearly impossible. I know that. So what I want to be able to do is to create for you some little videos, little vignettes, no more than about 40 minutes, that takes you deeper into that principle and that will take you into deeper into knowing what are some key action steps that a board might consider doing if you were really going to operationalize that principle. And you could watch it at home, in your jammies, okay, feet propped up or whatever. You could do Netflix, then you can do me, then you can go back. But in any case that you would do it at home. Then I will come for each one of your work sessions for the next 12 to 18 months. And if you could give me 40 minutes, 40 to 45 minutes at each work session, where we will do some reflection. We will, I will give you homework. I hate to say that, but I'm probably going to give you homework with it. We'll talk about your homework, and we'll talk about how well you are doing with moving forward with some of these particular strategies and action steps. We'll do some revision if we need to. You can give me help and support in knowing that the wording of the continuum on that particular principle might need some revision, some help. All right? And so that's sort of my thought, that we would do this. I would really love to be able to have some time in May that we take these 3 principles and thoughtfully talk about what are some possible action steps with each one of them. I don't know, we can try to do that a little bit tonight. I know that trying to get you together in May may be obviously very difficult, especially with graduation and, lives that you have, but we can try. And if we can't do it in May, very much, maybe hopefully early June, but I'll send you out, I'm trying to clear my calendar now. I will send you out dates that work. It will only take about 2 hours, and you know me, I work evenings and weekends as well. So, I'll make it work for the board. Then what I would like to do is that in October is for us to be able to have another session together. Obviously, we'll have, our new board, and Dr. Scarlett will be here as well, and we will talk about and just kind of reflect on what the last 6 months have been, and to see if you would like to continue working with these particular principles, or if you want to do some revision, if you want to pick up something else instead. We'll do a little reflection and moving forward as well. I know I've just been talking like really fast, so I'm going to pause. Are you all right with that process? You all right? I'm looking at your eyes. Okay. Okay, cool. So, President Tony, we're going to start with you, my love. And what I'm going to ask you to do is that I'm going to ask you, of these 10 principles, when you step back and you look at them, what do you think for the next 6 months are the ones that you really need to focus on? Do you want me to read them out loud for the audience? Would that be for everybody? Okay.
If
cool.
you could read them out loud, and probably, I don't think everybody has a copy of those.
Oh, well, you know what? All right. See this book that I put at your, okay, do you see this?
Yes.
All right, I'm doing a little Vanna. I forgot to tell you about this. There was a school board in St. Louis County who asked if I would put together for them, for their new board members, specifically, a governance handbook. Just a key little book that would have information that's a little bit deeper than just your basic training kinds of things, and so I did. I forgot to talk to you about this. I'm so sorry. And if you would open it up to the table of contents, you're going to see the key areas that we talk about in there. And we'll talk about the whole thing with coordinated district leadership, your fiduciary responsibilities as a board member. If you've been with me for the last 2 or 3 years, you've heard this 947 times. Then what I did in part 2 is that, and Sadie and Tracy, I'm going to give you a heads up for your training, because one of the things they're going to ask you when you go is, what are your 6 governing tools? What are the tools that are given to you for helping to do all of your board duties, and I expect you to be able to raise your hand and to say, we know all 6 of them, all right? Because they are, and first of all, your first tool is your strategic plan for St. Louis. That will be Transformation Plan 4.0 in the version that it is in now. And Matt, I'm fully aware, all right, that it needs a little help, okay? All right, but we've got it there. The other one is your policy. The third one is what Ms. Banks has just gone through and talked to you about with your budget. Your fourth one are your agendas for your board meetings. Your fifth one, believe it or not, and a lot of boards look at me and go, really? And the answer is yes, and that's your professional development plan for your educators. And then the last one is your superintendent evaluation process. So, seasoned board members, what is it that unites all 6 of these? Why do we call these your 6 governance tools? Not a rhetorical question. I love how none of you are looking at me. Okay, let me give you a hint. Did you vote to approve the agenda today? You didn't. You don't do that for your work session ones?
We don't do that.
You don't ever do that.
I think we used to. Dorothy's back there. Natalie's there. We don't do it anymore.
We used to approve and adopt the agenda. It was a motion on the agenda.
Huh.
We don't anymore. It changed at some point.
Huh, we'll talk about that, okay? Do you approve your budget? Oh, thank you. Okay, all right. Do you approve the, when new policies are brought to you, do you approve those? Okay, there you go. Okay, do you get my trend? All right. So in other words, these are all things that you are supposed to, come on, vote on and approve. All right, and so that's what unites all of them. And so when I was working with brand new board members, Tracy and Sadie, I would say these 3 things. If you have voted and approved them, the number 1 is that you better know where they are. All right, like how do I access my policies? Where is the budget? Where can I see the professional development plan? What is the process for evaluating our superintendent? The second thing that you better do is that you better read them, okay? You need to know what's in the transformation plan. You need to know what's in your policies. And then this is the most important one, and that is that you need to use them, okay? And not just skate on by. Okay. Then part 3 of my handbook for you is just about common issues that you will face as board members, things like social media, things like, visiting schools, public comment at meetings, Missouri Sunshine Law, those types of things. And then because it is absolutely critical to our lives, in a school district, you'll see Appendix A is about MSIP 6 and the MSIP 6 standards and indicators, and all of the leadership standards are ones that MSBA helped to write. And they do measure some of those particular standards to inform your APR, so you have an impact there. Appendix B, Dr. Van Noy's helping me with, okay, because we have kind of a listing of some abbreviations, common things that you'll hear, like what's an IEP, what's a 504, who is DESE, why do we care? All of those types of things, and Dr. Van Noy is helping me to even update that as we speak. And then Appendix C is about a possible process that you can use in onboarding new school board members. And this is primarily for your superintendent and for your board president and your board vice president to be able to help you in figuring all of this out. Because one of the things that we do know from the research too is that if a district has a really good onboarding process for their new board members, the amount of time that it takes for you to really get your sea legs, to get your feet on the ground, is reduced from 18 months to about 6 months. And so that's pretty impressive to be able to do that. So again, I wrote a guide for you on some possible ways that you can do that across 12 months, not all at one time. I think your head is spinning enough right now that you need to pace it a little. So I take you through that because guess what's at the very end of this book for you, and that is, Ms. Cousins, here is the continuum of effective governance practices. And here's where all 10 of them are. Okay, so very quickly, I'm just going to kind of go down through what those 10 principles are, and then we're going to talk more specifically about them. The very first one, and again, we're talking about Stepford boards here. Right, do you remember Stepford wives? You don't, you're way too young, okay? All right, but Stepford wives were these robotic women who were, you know, like perfect wives and so forth. But in any case, this is what we know will be like the perfect board. And that is number one, the number one principle is a focus on student learning and achievement. And that you are a vision-focused board on learning and achievement for each student. And a lot of times we say all kids, but you know, when you throw everybody into all, it's like they're all like in a group. We're talking about each kid, and that guides your board governance, your goals, and your practices. The other thing is that boards are continuously improving. They know that you've got to continue to plan and to work towards goals that will help to support all kids. The other one is about accountability and monitoring progress, and that is that the board is systematic about monitoring district progress on their goals. And there are specific ways to do that. The other one is that you demonstrate sound budgetary and financial accountability. The other one, on number 5, is about board operations. You follow your policy, you're ethical, you do your fiduciary duties. Number 6 is that board meeting practices, and that is that you're prepared for your board meetings, that you follow your agenda, all of those. Number 7 is about your discussion and your decision-making, that you are transparent, that you use data and evidence and information to make your decisions. Number 8 is that you have a strong relationship with your superintendent. Number 9 is that you have, you implement strategies to be able to have good communication and engagement with all of your stakeholders. And number 10 is that you know that you don't know it all and that you have to continue to work on your own professional development. So those are the big global pieces, okay? And so that's why you can see why I looked at those and I'm going, okay, all of these research studies point to these same 10, great, but what does it look like in action? And so that's why I have been working on the next few pages that you will see, and you will see the continuum that looks like this, and it's going to have kind of the blue and the yellow kind of up at the top. And what I did there is that in using a continuum, you identify, going down on the left-hand side, you identify the core components. And so with principle number 1 was student learning and achievement, you're going to see that the core components within that principle is about having said and stated and knowing your district purpose, of having student achievement goals, that your discussion and your decision-making is centered around those student achievement goals, right? That your policies, your practices, your programs, all of those are aligned to your achievement goals, and that you as a board member have a working knowledge in your head of how your students are doing, okay? And that you're able to communicate that. Then if you keep going, you're going to, oh no, the principle number 2 is on the other page. So you'll see going across the continuum is that I wanted to be able to show you that, okay, if you are just starting out working on this principle for this particular component under emerging, this is what it would look like. So, for example, I'm going to go student achievement goals. Will you walk this one across the continuum with me? Okay. So if you look at student achievement goals and that red stuff that's right there where it says MSIP 6, L3C, what I did is that I aligned each one of these components to all of the standards in MSIP 6. So if in fact you implement these particular action steps, you are in fact fulfilling your responsibilities under MSIP 6 leadership standards. So one of the first things under emerging is that, okay, we've got goals, all right, but goals for improving student achievement have been established by the administration. You with me on that? We've got goals, but you didn't have any part of it, okay? Going across, goals for improving student achievement have been established by the administration and board. Well, that's great, at least you're a part of it, but if you keep going on to the right, under proficient, what a proficient board would do is that input from staff and stakeholders has informed the creation of goals for improving student achievement by the administration and board. And then if you are in the advanced column, okay, input from staff and stakeholders, okay, goals for improving student achievement have been, it should be collaboratively established by the stakeholder, staff, and board. That didn't come out right, but anyway, you know what I mean, okay? All right. So in any case, that's the way the continuum would work. We can't do all 10. We can't. And so my hope is that here in just a few minutes that we can come to some consensus about the 3, no more than 3, that you would like to work on for the next 6 months. All right? So
I'm ready for my assignment.
you ready? Are you ready, Tony?
I understand now. Now I'm excited.
Now
like
you're
you
excited.
were.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. All right. Hang on, I'm going to write them down so I don't forget because I know myself. All right.
I have
Okay.
to say,
Miss-
Dr. Williams is over here oohing and awing. She said
Is
under
she?
her breath, I love a good rubric. So you've impressed the Harvard PhD, Janet.
Hot dog. Okay, that makes me feel, okay. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Williams. I take, because your
This is
praise
good.
means a lot to me, so thank you. Okay.
So for me,
Yes, ma'am.
3, 7, and 9.
Okay, 3 is which one?
Accountability and monitoring progress.
Okay.
7 is board discussion and decision making.
Okay.
9 is stakeholder communication and engagement.
Okay. All right, so that's Ms. Cousins, okay? Mr. Davis?
I was close to Miss Cousins.
It's fine. You get to be, you don't have to do everything she tells you to, okay? All right. It's really okay. All right, go for it.
I picked 3.
Okay.
I picked 8, board and superintendent relationship, and 9, stakeholder communication engagement.
Okay. Ms. Donna? Okay. 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 Ms. Natalie?
So number 3, accountability and progress monitoring, board and superintendent relationship, and either 7 or 5, board operations or board discussion and decision making. I'm sort of split on those. I can't decide which really falls into what we need to work on.
Okay. Miss Emily?
Well, I like number 1.
Do ya? Okay, all right. Thank
I
you.
would love
Okay.
to have a shared vision. And then number 5, board operations. I really would love to refer to policies all the time.
Wouldn't that be great? Okay, yeah, okay.
And then number 9 with the stakeholders.
Okay.
I'll give my 7 as a 5 to Emily. I'll go with that.
Okay, so you are 3, 8, and 5, or 3, 8, and 7.
3, 8, and 5.
Okay. All right. Miss Sadie.
I have a lot to learn, and I trust
I,
my
I understand, but
colleague.
you've been observing for,
Absolutely.
the last year or so. So,
Absolutely. So I would go with number 1.
Okay.
Absolutely. Number 5 and number 8.
okay. Mr. Tracy?
Almost 3, 6, and 7.
Okay. I'm counting. Are you counting to see which ones are? And I will tell you that it's really hard to separate number 1 out of number 3. So just know that and I'm doing this with Columbia as well. They were in this conundrum, and they wanted to meld 3 and 1 together, and I did let them, okay, do that, so that we've got that. So would you be comfortable, Emily and Sadie, if in fact we did a 3-1 meld? You all right with that? Okay. So we know that number 3, within in fact number 1, is going to be one of them. The other one that came up is about board number 7, which is board deliberation. I've got 1, 2, I've got 3 of those. And I've really got 3 8s with the board superintendent relationship, which I think, I don't mean to be like pushy, but I really think that's important. Okay, so I'm going to make you do that one. All right, so that will be 8. And then how do you feel about 7, which is about the deliberation and discussions using, okay. And we can weave in policy, believe me. But you're in kind of the transition right now with a little bit with policy. We know that, but we can also just share with you some of the things that are, good practice as well. Okay? All right. So, my loves, you have decided a combination of 3-1, okay, 8 and 7. You're good with that? All right. So here is your homework. I've got a little homework to do for you that I will have done for you. Probably won't be this week. It'll probably be towards the end of next week. And that is that I'm going to have your little learning modules, all right, ready to rock and roll. But we're going to start with, I think, principle number 3, combination 1, with that monitoring, all right, and with, making sure that you are a student-focused, student success-focused board. And then we'll weave into probably number 8 in your preparation for bringing, on Dr. Scarlett, and then probably with number 7. Are you good with that? Okay. I can be bossy sometimes, so you just need to tell me if you don't feel. Do what? Okay, good. All right. All right, so that's what we're going to do. So what I am probably going to be doing is I'm going to ask you if you would please, and you could do this Friday night when you're just like doing nothing, okay? And that is to take your continuum and really look at principle number 1, principle number 3, principle number 7, and principle number 8. And I want you to be able to share with me, because I'm going to ask for it when I see you again, hopefully in May or in early June, is that I'm going to ask for your thinking about what does this look like for us. If we were really going to implement this principle, if we were really going to dig into each one of these components, what are some of the things that we either need to start doing, maybe stop doing, or what we need to know more about? Okay? And so I will be asking you, when I see you again, to be able to give to me some possible action steps for you as a board with each one of these principles. I do have some that I have put together, but I don't want to just give it to you. This has got to be your work. And so if you get stuck, if you're kind of going, whatever, just know I'll have a backup in my purse to be able to share with you, when I see you again. Okay? Fun. It's going to be fun, isn't it? All right. So here's the other thing that I'm going to ask you to do, and that is that, because I will be emailing you probably tomorrow afternoon, and I'm going to be asking you to be able to see if you could find some time possibly, in May, and I'll give you some dates, that we could possibly get together for 2 hours, and that get together can be by Zoom if you need it to be. It can be hybrid. It can be, whatever. Because I know trying to get all of our schedules to work will be extremely difficult. But I'm going to send you some of those dates. I'm probably going to ask Ms. Henry to send you out a little doodle poll to be able to vote on what time is best. I talked about you, Ms. Henry. You okay with that? All right. Okay. All right. I love her. You will love her too. Okay. All right. I'm so excited about this. And Columbia Public Schools wants to be able to do a joint session with you because they're the other field testers. And I'm just thinking that would be awesome. I believe in creating these friendships and these partnerships of school board members across, from different parts of the state. And they are young. They are young. They're a young
What are
board.
you saying, Janet?
I'm saying that you've been through some stuff. And, Natalie and Donna are the only ones from, the Eon days, where we used to have an SAB and an elected board at the same time and went through that 900 hours of training that the state board had you go through. That's how we became friends. And, and why
And
I
it
love
was
them.
lovely to have you there with us through that, Janet, through so
Yeah.
much of it. And I think you all will really enjoy working with Janet. I don't say that just because she's standing here. I say that all the time behind her back, too.
There you go. Okay. All right.
Is there any more questions for Ms. Janet? We are excited, Ms. Janet.
Oh, I know.
This is
I
a
know.
lot to do, but it's much needed, and thank you for thinking of us to be the pilot.
I love you. So thank you. So thank you, St. Louis. Okay.
Now to the May consent agenda review. Is there any questions? Does anyone have anything they would like to ask questions on?
I have some questions. 592305, this is a MOU with Near Southside Employment Coalition. And I think there's another one, 592308, a MOU with Demetrius Johnson Charitable Foundation. I don't know who owns it. Oh, sorry. It might be volunteer. I think it might be. I don't know what it is. Oh,
Good evening.
She already knows. She ready.
all right. So 05 and 08.
Thank you, Ms. Boyd.
Absolutely. Good evening.
My question, Ms. Boyd, I was just looking at the supporting documentation and board docs, and it looked like these are two MOUs that are kind of stale, that we haven't had anything for at least the last 2 school years.
Yes, sir.
One because of the pandemic, and then this current year, it said because of, I think the reason given was staffing shortages for both of those. So
Yes,
are those
sir.
staffing shortages at these organizations, or those internal staffing shortages?
Both.
Okay.
It's both.
And so I guess my question is, are you confident that these are rectified, or is this optimistic that we're going to approve it and maybe see if it goes this year?
We're confident that we'll be able to make this go through. We are confident, yes.
Okay. Yeah, that was my question on those. I have
Yes.
another question about 592326. This is the agency agreement with Arches. It said Mr. Watson's the owner of this because of food service, but I wonder if that's really Dr. Bender. But I don't know. Okay.
I think it's a combination, but I'm going to ask Deputy Watson
Wait till I ask my question, Dr. Bender.
to come out, because it might, I think it's a combination of the two, because it is Arches. Deputy Watson?
So I know Arches is one of our aftercare providers. They were previously sort of the largest aftercare provider. Looking at the board docs documentation, we sort of see this is sort of the incredible shrinking partnership. And so my question is, well, I guess first, one of the things in board docs says that the funding from the mental health board has been cut for this program. I know previously Arches received funding for after-school programs from the Mental Health Board. The Mental Health Board administers the Children's Services Fund, which is a property tax levied on residents. That property tax was increased under Prop R a couple of years ago, which was supposed to be dedicated to education initiatives. I don't know if you have any information as to why the Mental Health Board cut funding for this program, which was successful. It served children under their mission. I just don't have any information on that.
I do not. I'm going to defer to Dr. Bender.
I told you.
So
It's all right. And we can postpone that question. I guess my question is my question, that a version of my question that I always ask in terms of the plan for after-school care. And I know it's always been evolving. It's been evolving during the pandemic as funding becomes available. And I think maybe it was the last meeting I asked about funding for after-school care with ESSER dollars, and we're going to continue that program for next year using it as extra service pay. We know that's not, ESSER dollars are going to go away, and so before we had ESSER dollars, we used the Mental Health Board funding in the Arches. So I guess my overarching question is, and you don't have to answer this tonight, is there a plan for after-school care and how we're going to fund it and how we're going to find providers?
We'll investigate and give you an answer.
So I know this was submitted by Althea Santiago, so we'll follow up and get additional information from Althea. Thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Davis? Anyone else has questions for the consent agenda?
Yes, I have a question on 0509-2315-15 to approve a renewal contract with the Urban League to operate student and family support programs at $525,000.
Dr. Bender?
Dr. Bender, thank you.
I just have it under a different number here. So this is the Urban League 525. We've got two items with them. One is free through grants. The second one is basically providing the same services, but through a different, it's not grant funded. So the other one is. So we had a 5% increase. This is year 2 of a 3-year cycle on this. They provide all sorts of support, from if families need transportation, if they need assistance with employment, food service, utilities. They run the whole gamut of case management for those families.
So where can the public find this information? I mean, when I want to vote on something like this, I'd like to see the results of their services, because it says it's a renewal, but I don't know, I haven't seen anything from prior years as to the success. You might have saw it, but as a board member, I haven't seen anything.
Yes, they provide data on what they do. How they advertise it, I don't know, but I'll be happy to get you that information, how it's advertised to those school communities.
No, not how it's advertised. I wanted to see the results. Where can we find if it really worked, or who they're really servicing to the entire board, not just to me?
Yeah, I will get you more information besides the vendor report. I will get back with our team and get you that.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Dr. Bender, before you go, let me ask a question in regards to that. When we're doing the renewals, are we getting feedback from the principals or the staff to say, you know, absolutely this program is working, this is how successful it's been, or no, you know, we just don't think that this is doable for us right now?
Yes, that is part of the vendor performance report. So we check in with the principals. Are you pleased with the service? What should we add in, take out? Are you any concerns? So yes, very much. And these schools have indicated they are pleased with the service.
Okay.
Just a follow-up on Donna's question about, well, I mean, I'm looking at the $525,000, and that is to come out of SLPS general budget, correct?
I believe so, yes.
And the Urban League was just given a check from SLDC for $10 million, so I'm kind of wondering if we could maybe negotiate a discount there, because it seems like they have some excess funding.
That was for historic tax credits, so that wasn't toward what they do. That was just like a tax
It
credit
was for the
them.
expansion of their headquarters,
Right.
so I'm just wondering if they could find more room in their budget since they don't have
I
to
like
spend
that, Nellie. I like that.
Can always ask.
Any other questions for Dr. Bender before she try to run away?
I had an easy one for you. It's 592309 about the Compass Group USA. Could you just tell me a little bit more about them? So it's school to work transition training for special education students. Is that a national organization? Are they local? And do they serve other districts as well?
That's Ms. Boyd, so I'm going to ask Ms. Boyd to come
Okay.
up. Thank you.
So it is local and it supports our students at Nottingham High School. We want to make sure that once they leave Nottingham, they have the social skills and the independent skills so they can be self-sufficient as much as possible. So it's local here.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms.
Ms. Boyd, while you're there, I just did have a question because I'm just curious.
Sure.
There's the item on here about the Head Start programs, and I think I understand it, but would you mind just explaining it? It's just kind of interesting to me.
Sure. So as the city's LEA, we have the responsibility for Child Find for our preschool students. So we have Head Starts, urban leagues in the city where we provide those evaluations for P3s and P4s as needed.
Thanks. That's what I thought. I'm just always fascinated to learn the breadth of everything that the school district is responsible for performing in the city of St. Louis for our children.
Absolutely.
I just don't
Yes, sir.
know if anybody really comprehends it.
Absolutely.
And that was just an example that stood out to me.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Jones?
I do have one last question. It's in regards to 0509, 23, 16, and 17 with the Junior Achievement of Greater St. Louis. And this is in regards to our students being enrolled in the personal finance. I'm just really hoping, I don't know who's in charge of that one, but I'm just hoping that we will eventually bring that into St. Louis Public Schools, the personal finance, from KG up to the 12th grade. I understand that junior achievement might be better suited at this time, but I think that we can do a great job if we would bring that in-house, because so many of our students are suffering financially and would benefit from a longer course than just a brief stint with junior achievement.
It's our academics department, so thank you very much for that comment.
I have a question about those two as well. Do we have any evidence that this increases student achievement? Because otherwise it's just taking kids out of the classroom. And I'm with Ms. Donna. I would love to see these programs inside our schools and run by us, and not just be everybody can be an entrepreneur, which isn't true.
Thank you, Deputy Smith Jr. I'm sorry, go ahead, Ms. Evans.
But also learning about your rights as a worker and all of those things that we desperately need in America.
Sure, and so I think I'll address two questions that I saw there or heard there. The first is, do we have any additional evidence that it's working? So we can, outside of the vendor report, we can actually get the data specifically from the schools that have been working in that space. And then secondly, every summer we go through curriculum reviews, so content reviews. We work with our curriculum specialist, and we bring our teacher leaders in to review the curricular resources that we have. And that's been a topic of conversation before. I heard Ms. Jones before talk about that, and so that could be a possibility of following board policy to implement a new course, and that would happen at the very beginning of the school year.
Okay. I'm not sure I have a picture of what you just said. Can you pretend you're explaining it to my 5th grade son?
And so I'm not sure.
There's a teacher review. What does that look like? Do they suggest things?
And so I'll try to do that again. So the first response was outside of the performance review, the vendor report, we'll be able to work with those individual schools to get specific data that they've been able to collect outside of that to see what impact it may have had in math, impact in social studies, all of those different areas that junior achievement really supports. So that's the first one. So I wanted to make sure that addressed that question. All right. Second question is around curriculum content reviews. So every summer we bring our curriculum specialists together, and they bring teacher leaders together as well. The teacher leaders have implemented all of the curricular resources, right? So our core 4, math, science, social studies, English, and they also focus on our elective areas as well, performing arts, because we want to get critical feedback from those that are implementing the curriculum in the classrooms. And there's a structured process where they're actually reviewing the curriculum plans. And so let's take a look at what we called out needs to happen in Q1. We're getting targeted feedback that worked, that didn't work. Here's what you need to revise. Here's what you need to take out. And then to answer Ms. Jones's question, we heard your feedback last time about wanting to have financial literacy being a part of our curriculum or part of what we teach in classes. And so just following board policy, anytime we want to introduce a new course or new curriculum, we are able to follow a particular timeline and introduce that at the very beginning of the school year. And so that's something that our curriculum team is working on to see how can we introduce financial literacy as a part of the overall offerings that we have, whether that would be middle school or high school. We're still in conversations with that, but that's anchored in or a part of the larger curriculum conversations that happen every summer as they're reviewing current content that we have.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Smith Jr.
Any more questions for consent agenda?
I just had one question about the item that was brought up at the last session for the Shakespeare and the audio equipment at Sumner. I'm not seeing that on here. Is that still being worked out and will be a walk-on item?
Dr. Crapo?
Crapo is coming up.
Thank you for that question. I'm glad you asked that question. We actually just entered it into board docs last night, and what we did is we made sure it's clear that it's for the equipment and for training on how to use the equipment, not actually on workshops from Shakespeare Festival.
Okay, thank you. So we'll see that at our May meeting?
Yes, it'll be a walk-on in May.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Crapo.
Dr. Crapo. I think it was you or Watson in regards to Aim High.
Yes, so I appreciate that question. We are still working to get all of the data from starting in 2017. We have that data. There were a few years that during the pandemic, we didn't have data because we didn't actually send students there. So we're still working to gather all the data. My goal is to get that to you by Friday, so you have that in time for a vote in May.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for the consent agenda? No questions. We're going to move on to the reports for the board, from the board members.
I have 1.5 reports. First, May 5th at 5:30, virtual, so it'll be live streamed virtually, will be the Prop S committee. I know that's not my committee, but
Not yet.
Yeah, I think you have 30 days. Legislative committee, again, I still have not met. We still have not met. One update is there were 2 bills that we were asking people to contact their senators in particular. One regarding open enrollment, and the other one, I hate to use air quotes, but they call it the Parents' Bill of Rights. That got amended to also have a again, air quotes, teacher Bill of Rights in the House, and so we've asked opposition for both of those. So far, there's been no action. Currently, this evening, they are debating the budget in the Senate, and so they have to pass a budget in the Senate. The House already passed a budget. They're about $3 billion apart, and so we'll see how that goes. There's about 3 weeks left, and they have not passed really any substantive education legislation of the hundreds of bills that were filed, but we still continue to watch those. So that's the update from the Legislative Committee. So again, a lot is happening and not a lot is happening. We will have a legislative meeting at least at the end of session to sort of wrap it up. But at this point, I don't really see a need to do much else other than we just sort of go over things that could possibly happen, may not happen. We don't know. It's really just sort of a very strange year. Also, we are going to have, again, in the summer, in July, I forget the date, but we'll get that out, a legislative meeting for our newly elected Board of Aldermen as well as our local representatives, and so certainly I hope the board comes, everyone will be invited. I'm sure we'll live stream it. The plan is to have that at CVPA if we can work that out, so that'll be in the summer. Those are my two committee reports.
Mr. Davis, can you please sum up the impact of open enrollment?
Yes, the open enrollment bill as it stands now, open enrollment is a bill that passed the House. There's a Senate version as well, which I don't believe has passed yet, but it did pass out of committee. We went to go testify against it in the Senate. It would basically allow any school district that wants to receive students from any other school district in the state. So, for example, I'll just give this example. If you live in Clayton, but you want to go to Ladue, and Ladue agrees to have you, you can go to Ladue if this bill passes. You have to drive yourself to the Ladue school. It doesn't include transportation. With you goes your state funding. So the Clayton would get to keep their local taxes, their federal funding, any grant funding. As we went over the budget, they get the same sort of stuff in different percentages. But the state funding that goes as an allocation for that student would go to Ladue. So Clayton would lose their state funding. It would go to Ladue. So, okay, that may sound great, may sound wonderful. Maybe you're a track athlete and Ladue has a better track team. There is a limitation in the bill about athletes, that there's a 1-year waiting period because a lot of school districts are concerned that it's just going to be a feeding frenzy for athletes. It still will, but there is an attempt to limit those things. The one thing, though, that is, well, there's a lot of things that are very disturbing in it. One of it is that there is no requirement in the bill that if you have special needs, if you're an English language learner, if you have any other sort of special circumstances, and that school district that is the receiving school district believes that they cannot accommodate you or really don't want to accommodate you, they don't have to. So that's sort of a slap in the face to the idea of public education, that every student is entitled to a free public education. This is going to be a school choice bill that allows school districts to limit who they accept based upon what they want to accept. We were originally, St. Louis City was originally exempted from the bill. The wording in it was to do with any school district that was subject to a desegregation court order. That language was stripped out on the floor of the House. It made it through committee. It was taken out at the last minute on the floor of the House. It was substituted with some language that was very vague and would basically, I believe, would probably then now include us. So if it does pass, it would include, as written now, it would include St. Louis City. Again, so if that passed, any school district that wanted to take students from the city could. Those students would be responsible for their own transportation to that school district. And if there were some special circumstances that the school district felt they couldn't accommodate with that student, they would not have to. Is that a summary?
Yes. Thank you. Any more reports, Ms. Jones?
I'm going to need your help on this one, Natalie. I'll try. This is just a follow-up on the question that, excuse me, was asked earlier about urban strategies and the reason why they selected 63106. Natalie, what did you come up with?
You put me on the spot. So I was just skimming. I have not fully researched this, but I was just skimming the Secretary of State's website, and it looks like they, the incorporating organization for them, have multiple development projects going on that look to be in that area. So that's all that I know for sure. But I can look into it more if you want.
Like the Kansas City Chiefs? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any more board reports?
Yes, the Missouri School Boards Association Summer Summit will be June 16th to 17th this year. It will be in Branson. I encourage you all to go. It will be at, I think it's called Chateau on the Lake. It's usually, it's similar to the annual conference, but it's in the summer. Bring your family. It's cool, it's fun, and you get to talk to fellow school board members across the state. The Land Reutilization Authority meets tomorrow at 8:30. It will be virtually, and that is at 1520 Market Street. I believe that it is still best to attend virtually because they are not allowed public in.
Any more reports? I would love a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Henry.
Mr. Hikes. Ms. Weiss.
Yes.
Ms. Hubbard.
Yes.
Ms. Fowl.
Yes.
Ms. Jones.
Yes.
Mr. Davis.
Yes.
Ms. Cousins.
Yes.
We are adjourned.